I guess, Julian, before we get into the real meat and bones of this, take me back to those early days of Positive. So I can actually remember when I first came to see you in Richmond. I think I was living down the road in East Sheen. So I
Right.
jumped on the
Yeah.
old train down to Richmond, jumped off, walked across Richmond Bridge, and I remember it
Yeah.
was a really sunny day walking across that bridge. The offices to Positive were on the right hand side
Yeah.
as you came
Yeah.
over the bridge, and I came in. And there you were. I met the famous Julian Writer. So
I don't know about that. That's how I was. That's how
back
I
in
was.
that back in those
Scratching
days
my
when
head.
yeah,
How could you help us?
I can help you. When I first walked across that Richmond Bridge back in the day, it was you, handful of people, in Positive. What did the business feel like then when it was in that
Well,
first
I'll tell you first of all, we were once described by Campaign magazine as a regionally based agency.
regionally based?
Yeah, I know. I mean, we were still on the tube line and still on the main train line into London, but campaigns never really had much for sort of independent agencies that weren't come out of the likes of O&M or WPP or VCCP or the like. So yes, regionally based agency we described as. So there we go. You walked over the bridge and that was it. We were in a different county.
I was going to a different county to meet a regionally based agency. I love it. So that's how we felt. I love it.
I mean,
Um,
I've got to be honest. Those were some of the best days when we were smaller. I think one of the things I always ask people when I work with them is, and growth is often the main topic of conversation. Is why do you want to grow? What do you want out of growth? Because with growth comes a whole different set of issues and different set of problems to solve. And sometimes, actually, being small, being a lifestyle business, having more control yourself, if that's what you enjoy, it can be a fantastic thing. For me, the only reason for growth is either to feed a challenge, which is, can I compete at a bigger level on a bigger stage, or it's to capitalize an investment in a business, so to make some money out of it.
yeah,
Those are things that I think people need to come to a conclusion about what they're chasing, as a founder, owner, operator, at an early stage, because it really does make quite a difference to how you plan, the future year by year. I mean, when we started, there really were three of us, me and my business partner and an account exec who sort of was general help on everything. We'd left great jobs, we had no guarantees, we had houses on the line, we had mortgages, we had kids, all those sorts of things. So it was exciting as it was terrifying, but it was great fun, and it did remind me. We did everything ourselves. We were selling, delivering, invoicing, making the tea, putting computers up, decorating offices, you name it. We were doing
I
it.
love it.
And it actually reminded me of when I used to have a bar job when I was sort of 18 before I went off to university. And I used to get paid in cash. Those were the good old days of cash. And I used to stick the money in a pot at the end of my bed. And if there was money in the pot, I went out. And if there wasn't any money in the pot, I didn't go out. And it's no different to when you're running an agency. We found that it was a lot more relaxed. You knew what was going on. You could control it. So if at Friday lunchtime, you'd had a good week and there was nothing really desperate pending, you put the answer phone on. God, those are the days. You put the answer phone on the office line, and we all went down to the pub, and they'd opened.
And pick the fax machine stuff coming in as you come back on a Monday morning. So
No,
I've
no,
learned
I'm not that old. Not that old. Not no, when I started
I've
positive, we didn't
learned
have
I've
fax
learned
machines and stuff.
something. I've learned something today. So you said there about what's your motivation for growth? Is it to have a lifestyle? Is it to have money? I feel yours was to prove Campaign wrong, that you wasn't a regional based agency, and that's what drove you to grow the business to 150 people. So when you decided that you were going to move from that three, you were going to grow the business, there would have been definite points in that journey, maybe getting to 15 people, then to 30, then 60,
Yeah.
100. Were the points where you were a bit like, oh, the ground's just moved here. Something feels very different.
For
The
sure.
way we've been running this isn't now working at 15, not at 30, not at 60. Talk to me a little bit around that journey and how you would have had to let go of certain things and let
yeah,
the leadership journey of the people coming through the business now start doing their job, which was,
yeah,
leading in the roles you'd put them into.
yeah.
Because I know as a founder that is quite a big thing to go, I've got these people, they should be doing that job. Do you know what? Let them do it and don't include me.
Mm.
How did you cope with that? Because from 3 to 150, there have been loads of changes in there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's there is no one sort of clever hack that solves everything. That there's no solution. I've always looked at it at there's hundreds of decisions that need to be made, on a daily basis, and it's making sure that you make more better decisions than worse decisions, and surviving the terrible ones because everybody makes them. I made a decision that cost us a very large piece of business that was probably about 25% of our revenue at the time. And it's how you react to those sort of things I think are really important. But I guess every time the business doubled in size, I realized that I needed to change, and I needed to change the way that I work with the business and manage the business. And that was the real journey. Actually, it was a challenge for me more than anything, I think. At a £500,000 turnover, you sort of wear every hat. Everything tends to depend on you, and you are the business. But when you get to around that sort of 2 million, that's when you get the first uncomfortable realization that you can't be in everything. You can't go to all the client meetings. You can't write every proposal. And suddenly, if you're arrogant enough to believe that you're best at everything, and most founders have a confidence, perhaps rather than arrogance, that they are good at these things, which is why they start their businesses. But you just can't do that. You can't raise every invoice, so your margins start sort of creeping down, and you feel like you've lost control. And it's not a loss of control. That's what growth is. Where you can't be in there and sort of do everything. And like most agencies and professional services businesses, you tend not to hire until you absolutely have to, and you protect your capital. But that kills momentum. And I think one of the big lessons I learned as we got bigger is to be brave enough to take people on at a point where it's 50-50, whether you can afford them, whether they will be paid for, and that sort of thing. Because often without them, you don't allow the business enough room to breathe to actually get to that next step. And that's certainly something with the agencies I'm working with at the moment. Is part of my role as a consultant or a non-exec or chairman is to help them be brave, and do that with experience, and allow them to make good decisions on hiring, when to hire, and the type of person they need to hire. And I wish I'd been braver earlier.
That is a really good
Really
point. I've
interesting one.
had many of those conversations where people are like, do I hire to get the business, or do I wait till I've got the business, then try to hire?
Yeah.
And I know you, and I know you use these type of things, but in getting to a point where you can make those brave decisions, for me, it comes down to visibility and having
100%.
visibility of the metrics, the data within the agency, to be able to say confidently, what we've got in the pipeline, what we've got going through the agency. We do need these type of resources to enable us to grow. So as you went through that growth, you started saying, look, I wish I'd been braver and taken people on. How did the way you sort of measure that performance change? Were there
Yeah.
big shifts in metrics you were watching, the way you managed them? Did you have I know Nicky
Yeah.
Gatton, we talked about 4 lighthouse metrics. There's some stuff. Did you say, do you know what, I wish I just started tracking this sooner?
Yeah,
Talk me a little bit around that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any of that at the beginning. It was just sort of gut feel. I think agency founders, certainly on the commercial agency founders, tend to have a natural feel for that, and that's why they're able to do what they do. But we initially measured. I mean, revenue. I was more interested in GP, which was actually the fee income that we were making. So
Right.
we had a lot of production. When we first started, we were still doing a lot of print production and that sort of stuff. So production margin. We used to print all of Royal Caribbean International's European brochures. So we had 10 different language versions of a 120-page brochure. So it was about £5 million print job, twice a year. But we made 10% on that. So I was interested in the 10%, not the 5 million turnover, because that flattered us, made us look sort of big. But actually, it was just money that was sloshing through. I mean, it's great if we could get some of that money up front. We were sitting on the cash, but that didn't last for long, unfortunately. But
I hope you recognise that correctly, Julian.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, absolutely. Well, yes, my accountant did. Unfortunately, they're usually the ones that make sure those things happen. But those are the sort of the obvious things. But you're absolutely right. We had to become more disciplined as we grew, because the biggest question I was always asked as we grew was, "I need more people. I need more people."
Yeah.
My simple question was, and what I probably realized, and that's when we engaged with you guys, is that I was being unfair, saying, "Well, show me the numbers that justify that, and I will take people on tomorrow." But they couldn't show me the numbers because we didn't have the systems in place to allow them to provide that sort of visibility. So, I felt I was doing a good job asking that question, but actually I wasn't doing a good job by not being able to provide them with the systems to do that. So we started then measuring utilization. We had a proper forecasting and pipeline process, resource planning, profitability by client, by team, and then down into sort of individual profitability. And I know timesheets is that perennial issue about, do we do them? Don't we do them? Nobody likes doing them. Well, my finance director used to say, and it's now my mantra, is nobody enjoys filling in timesheets, but everybody enjoys being profitable.
Yes.
For me, in a professional services business, which is what we are, we are people selling services. You need to understand your costs, which are your people, and you need to understand the profit that you can make out of those people. So if you don't have that visibility, there's no way that you can actually because everything you're chucking in the top is being wasted out the bottom. And we found that we were giving away too much work. We weren't charging out on jobs. People weren't as effective or efficient as they should be. We were doing things twice, and you don't find those things out until you actually have a system in place to allow you to do that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, the whole timesheet thing, it's been there, forever since I've been in the industry, 20 odd years. And I think now people are going, well, with AI, we'll sell outcomes, we'll do value-based selling. For me, that's relevant. That's just changing your commercial model of how you sell. You still need to understand the effort that's involved in delivering that. And also,
I can't just interrupt there, Jay. It's all well and good us as agencies saying, "Oh, we're going to go and do value-based selling," and the like. And I see this a lot, certainly on the agency hackers WhatsApp groups, is they're all trying to talk about how can you do this. The problem is we can only sell what clients want to buy, and clients are still in the mindset of buying time, and they are convinced that with AI they will have to buy less time because it will be quicker and easier to do things. So changing the client mindset is going to be is the goal at the moment, because until you do that, it doesn't matter how productive you want to be in selling value based. And I've been unfortunately in the industry long enough where I've seen that go around twice.
Yeah.
Value-based selling and the creative industry. So typical creative agencies have lived and died on that hill.
Yeah. I think we could do a whole webinar just on value-based selling, because, the agencies I often speak to, they want to do this, but I don't think there's enough coaching, mentoring, training of their teams to actually understand how you actually do that properly, because it's a whole different mindset to value-based selling than, here's a brief, this is how long it will take, and this is.
So as a quick example, we were working with the Children's Mutual. So when Gordon Brown was handing out baby bonds to people who had children to encourage long-term savings, we were responsible for all their digital marketing. So we built their website, all their performance marketing and the like. And we had two jobs going through production at the same time. One was to change a drop down menu item, a form item on their sign up process. So it was in the back end of their sign up systems for their accounts. We were also being asked to build a model for what one might want to save for long term for children. So do you want to save for a wedding, first part of a deposit, or sending your kids to private school or sending to university, and that sort of stuff. So that was a really engaging tool that we were going to put on the website. The other one was an unfortunate necessity that they had to do because of a change in legal terms. The drop down change was in their back end system. It went through all their protocols. So we had a huge amount of security time put in place to test, retest, and rebuild and things like that. And we quoted them £20,000 for it, and this was back in the day. And they almost fell off their chair because £20,000 to change one item in a drop-down form seemed absolutely extortionate. But the cost of doing that was massive. to build the interactive tool, we quoted out at something like 8 grand because that's what it cost us in time plus our margin. And I said, but that had a value of about £40,000, because they thought it was a brilliant idea. They could see it working, beautifully, and it felt good and also felt expensive. And the client even said, "Wow, that's amazing. I thought that was going to be about £30,000 to £40,000." So the staff who put those costings out there didn't understand the difference between cost-based pricing and value-based pricing.
Value-based pricing, and that comes down to how you've coached somebody to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
100%.
And if they don't have experience in doing that, it's very difficult.
And that really, that helps shape all of this, because if that had been, say, you when the agency was 10 people, 20 people, it might have
I would have made that
you
extra 20
having
grand.
that conversation and gone,
Absolutely.
hold on, these are really excited about this. I probably could put this in at, like, I might say to them, this will be between 30 and 80 grand, and then try to temperature test where they are and land somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a real symptom of, there, you've grown. You've now got people that you've said you need to be having the conversations with the clients, making the commercial decisions. And then, they've made a decision there where you're a bit like, how have we arrived at 8 grand when it could have been 40 or 50 grand? And I think that's the side of it that's like the math side, the day-to-day commercial side of running that business. But alongside that, and I think these two absolutely come together, is the culture of the agency and the business alongside the commercial rigor. And I know as agencies grow and businesses grow, those two things often become like loggerheads with each other, because when it was that small business, and we're going through the same type of thing here. We've been acquired, we're integrating two businesses. Back in the day when you were lean and funny, you could say, right, we'll have a summer festival on our field. Now you can't do that because all of these,
but that doesn't work for everybody as well.
It doesn't work, and you got people now in different locations and they wouldn't feel part of the team. So these things then have to start like changing. So you still want that, like in the past we had that commercial rigor, but with the fun around it and all these things you could do as a small agile business. As you grow and you get to like 50, 80, I can't even imagine what having a team of 150 people would be like. But how do you ensure that there's still some of that culture? When I say culture, it's really, for me, it's, you had positive and you wanted to achieve something, not be a regional agency by campaign. But there would have been still something in Julian that was like, but this is how I want to be seen as a
absolutely.
How do you control that culture? Because we did a session this week, we had all our team together on culture, and I said, whether you like it or not, culture starts to exist, and it'll exist in pockets as you get bigger. So for me, it's like, how do we frame the culture as a business together of what do we want on our journey? And I'd be really interested how you did that for, getting up to 150 people. What was that actually like?
I think you need to be very clear on the definition of the difference between culture and values. Because culture is something that, as you said, it can grow in pockets. It can be, the creative part of your business can have a different culture to the production side, can have a different culture to the performance marketing side, and you can't fight those. I mean, I've always said you can't blend cultures by giving everybody a branded hoodie.
No,
and I think that's what people think. And the problem is, I think that's what people think. And as you grow, you get different age groups. So people have different priorities. Some people might be wanting to pay a mortgage. Some people might want to go on holiday. Some people might not be driven by money. They might want, more time off, or they might want more engagement. They might want to learn more. So everybody brings a different thing, to their work day, and it's very difficult to try and account for that. So I think that the idea that culture should stay the same is not right. I think that the values should stay the same, and I think that's really important, that people know what you stand for. So do you, what your values are, about how you work with clients, how you treat your staff, what's your outlook on the world, are you about driving sales, are you about all those sorts of things. And at 10 people, culture is a personality. It's all about the founders. It's all about shared experiences. Everybody going down the pub together, everybody knowing each other. But when you're 150 across sort of 2 continents, you just can't do that. So culture then becomes much more intentional. And I hear the negative phraseology of what is it? Designed fun, which can be seen as a bit negative. Oh, yeah, we're going to go out and we'll have to have fun together this afternoon. But it's not really that. It's mostly about communication. And I think if you take anything away today, it's about communication. It's about leadership behaviors, putting processes in, and managing expectations. One of the things that we did again later on in our development process, and probably too late, was to build a proper leadership team with a proper structure where everybody had proper job descriptions, proper roles and responsibilities. They knew what was expected of them, and and they were accountable for that as well. So making sure that people knew what was expected of them, giving them tools to do it, empowered them. So the idea of letting go as a leader is much easier when you see empowered people making good decisions because of the tools and the responsibilities that you've given them, rather than just running around like a headless chicken going, I don't understand why nobody understands what they need to do or why they don't do it the way I do it. And I went from the latter to the former too slowly, I think. And, again, I could have saved a lot of headaches and a lot of issues by doing that quicker.
I think that's really, really sage advice. And I think as leaders, sometimes it's hard, that letting go, isn't it? But I think if you've got that framework, that structure, these are the values we work to. This is our vision. This is our mission, and you communicate that. And I think the word there as well is it needs regular reinforcement. I think that's the thing I've been guilty of in the past. Like we do it once or twice, and we think that's enough. But I think in reality, in our business, it needs reinforcing on a much more regular basis.
And don't be put off by naysayers, because there are plenty of those. So, you listen to the results of the football, and there's still plenty of people saying how rubbish we were. I mean, we had a win.
A win's a win.
And I think you can often be, you've got little things in the back of your mind that tick away because overheard somebody say, oh yeah, we've got to do one of those monthly all people calls. Oh God, that's so dull. But actually that's just one person. A lot of people really enjoy them because they find out what's going on. Again, as we grew, I had a battle with my business partner about how open we were with our leadership team and with the agency itself. How much financial information we shared, how many of the challenges we shared, giving genuine ownership to people. And I truly believe that the more of that you're able to do, I'm not talking about, telling them how much you pay yourself or what you take in dividends or anything, but, tell them about what your revenues are, tell them about what your costs are, tell them about how you make a profit, all those sorts of things, so that people understand the business properly, because then they can make better decisions.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Then you move faster and you do better. So the one thing I would say there is, again, something I wish I'd done earlier, is to hire a finance director earlier. So these days there are fractional finance directors and marketing directors and things like that, which is a really good thing. Because smaller agencies can't afford, I've paid mine 150 grand a year plus, package and everything else. So, but the money they made back for our business made that 150 grand a year just disappear. But I couldn't do that until I got to a certain size. And fractional, we used our accountants and me, up until that point. But because I was busy doing lots of other things, we were never in control of the numbers as much as we should have been.
Brilliant. Really, really good session. This really enjoyed it, Julian. I can't believe it's 9:57. That's gone so quick. I said we'd go over because I knew I'd enjoy speaking to you. Julian, really appreciate you spending the time today. We always ask our guests on the A game, before you go, one final bit of advice. You've given so much today, but if there was one final bit of advice, what would it be?
Is well, I've got my practice is called This Time Next Year, and it's about setting achievable goals within a quarterly basis to make things move forward, because you need a different version of the agency next year than from the one this year, now more than ever, because the market is moving so quickly. And if you are growing, then you will be a different type of agency and you will be a different type of leader. So the questions you should be asking yourself on a quarterly basis is, what should I stop doing? What should I start doing? And what should only I be doing?
I love it.
And that then gives you your job, because nobody gives you your job spec. You have to make it up as you go along.